Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I have told countless stories over the years, but by far the story that people always remember, and I could see somebody a decade later and they'll still remember the story of my father. I had an idea last night, and I thought I would try to tell it quite differently. Usually I've told it in chronological order, but I'm going to start with something pretty powerful that I thought I would want to mention up front. It was the middle of the night, and we were living, my mom, my dad, sister and I, living in the bottom half of a duplex in Flushing, Queens. They call them two-family houses. And the phone rang, and it was the police. And it was the third time in maybe 10 years. Police saying, someone has torched your store. This case was throwing a Molotov cocktail down the chimney, and the store was ruined, and he had to rebuild yet again. And I was always amazed at his resilience, but even more amazed than his bouncing back from that than from his story. The year was 1939. The town was Sierpz, Poland, a bucolic little halcyon place where nobody locked their doors. And one day there was a knock on the door, and it was two Nazis in black boots. And unlike in the movies, they didn't yell. One was silent, the other whispered, "You will be out of your house with only what you can carry on your back by noon tomorrow, or else." And the next day there weren't two Nazis. There were 12, and 2 trucks. Now they weren't whispering anymore. They went into all the Jewish households, and they said, "Raus!" And they grabbed everybody and threw the very young and the aged into one truck, and the able-bodied in another. And my father never saw his parents again. He was taken to a variety of work camps, and then finally to the Ponary death camp. How did he stay alive from a death camp? Well, this was before the days of the gas chambers, and so they simply shot a bunch of Jews. They threw them into a pit and shot them. And my father's job, along with 36 other men, was to bury them. And at the end of that first night, I believe, or may have been the second, and I've heard it two ways. One was either with his spoons that they gave him for dinner, or it may have been with the shovels they gave him, I don't know. But the 37 men dug a tunnel from the pit under the barbed wire fence that was adjacent. And of course, the guards immediately saw and shot most of them. My father was lucky, and he ran into the forest and escaped, where he lived thanks to the good Christians who took care of him. At the end of the war, he was dropped in the Bronx without a penny to his name, no money, no English, no family, no education, only the scars of the Holocaust tortures. What did he do? No job was beneath him. The only job he could get was sewing shirts in a factory in Harlem. And at the end of the day, at minimum wage, and at the end of the day, what did he do? Did he go home and say, "I'm a Holocaust survivor, I'm a victim. In addition, I went and I took a crappy job. I was a smart guy, and yet I had to be sewing shirts in a factory"? No, he went to Roosevelt High School night school to learn English, because he knew that unless he spoke decent English, he would always be consigned to a minimum wage job. What did he do on Saturday mornings? Did he say, "I'm a Holocaust victim, I've suffered the ultimate tortures, Jews have been the victim of anti-Semitism for 3,000 years, from the destruction of the temple, through the Inquisition where Jews were forced to convert or be burned at the stake, to the pogroms where the Russians went into the Jewish households and destroyed them or their property, through the Holocaust, of course, and the 6 million Jews"? What did he do on Saturday morning? He went to the owner of the factory, and he said, "Can I take those shirts that I sewed for you during the week and sell them out of a cardboard box on the street?" And he bought them for $1. This was 1947. And sold them for $1.50 on the street. What did he do with the money? Did he say, oh, it's Saturday night, now I'm going to party down? No. You see, my dad, my mom, who was also a Holocaust survivor whom my dad met at Roosevelt High School. My mom was an Auschwitz survivor. We'll just say she survived by how pretty she was. We were living right next to the elevated train in the Bronx, in a terribly dangerous neighborhood that roared 24/7. Nobody could sleep. Of course, there was no air conditioning. And my dad wanted to get us out of there. So he saved up the money that he got from selling the shirts out of the cardboard box so we could afford to rent on some store where he had some more control and didn't have to make minimum wage. It was 105 Moore Street, still one of the worst neighborhoods in New York City. It's in Brooklyn. On the one side, there was a Puerto Rican deli specializing in chicharrones, deep-fried pork intestines, and the smell of that merged with the smell on the other side of my dad's clothing store. It was a live chicken market, and there was a smell of live chicken blood. So the chicharrones and the live chicken blood made quite an aroma, an ambiance for my father's little clothing store. And when I say little, I mean little. The store was so small that he had to store most of the merchandise on folding tables. And as I said, the neighborhood was really, let's just, the word we use these days is gritty. And on the weekends, the kids were out of school, and they would come by, race, and steal boxes of shirts, boxes of sunglasses. My dad couldn't afford a security guard, so when I was 12, he asked me to be the security guard on Saturdays. And I've already mentioned the arsons, which is, my dad was told by one of the customers, said, "Why is they doing this to me?" And the customer said, "You're an idiot. Don't you realize? They don't want white people, let alone Jews, in their neighborhood." Their neighborhood, that was the words I remember. But what I remember more than anything in my entire life was one day on a Saturday when I'm at the store and the business was slow, and there was a parking meter in front of the store. And I remember having my elbow on one side of the meter. The meter was curved, and I had my dad was like a mirror image. He had his elbow on the other side. And when you're 12, you suddenly are not quite as self-absorbed. And I said, "Daddy, how come you so rarely talk about the Holocaust?" And he stiffened, which is something he rarely did. And he said, "Martin, the Nazis took 5 years from mine life. I won't give them 1 minute more." He said, "Martin, never look back. Always take the next step forward." And I have had the privilege of having been a career and a personal coach to some of the most successful people on planet Earth, as well as to some strugglers. And one of the differentiating features is the successful ones have had setbacks, failures, lots of them, just like the unsuccessful ones. But the successful ones are far more likely to have followed my father's advice. Stop looking back. Always take the next step forward. And I can leave you with no better advice, and I try to follow it myself. Anyway, that's a slightly new version of that, of my dad's story, which I told him I would tell at the end of every speech I'd ever give. But I'm telling it to you not that this is a speech, but because it's inspiring to me and to many of my clients. In any event, I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. And certainly would welcome you checking out any of my 28 books. They're all on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search on my name, Marty Nemko, Nemko, and you'll find more than you can stomach. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.